It was my second year at Harvard, and I was already accustomed to the intense routine of studies and sleepless nights. That semester, my friends and I were particularly excited to have finally secured a spot in the International Relations class with the famous Professor Ivanov. He was a legend on campus, a man who seemed to know everything about global politics, with an uncanny ability to captivate anyone who heard his stories. From the very first class, Ivanov stood out. His charisma was undeniable. He had a smooth, mysterious accent, and his eyes seemed to peer into the soul of every student in the room. It was impossible not to be drawn to his commanding presence. At the end of each class, a small group of us would always stay behind to discuss the topics covered, and Ivanov seemed to enjoy that. Soon, these discussions turned into informal meetings in his office. The professor's office was a world of its own. Located in an older wing of the campus, the environment was filled with rare books, ancient maps, and artifacts he had collected from his travels. Every corner of the place told a story, and I often found myself lost in thought, imagining the adventures those objects had witnessed. It was during one of these visits that Ivanov began to treat us more like colleagues than students. He had a peculiar way of making us feel special. He always called us by name, remembered details about our lives, and showed a genuine interest in our ambitions. This made us want to spend more time with him, and soon our small group, myself, Laura, James, and Emily, became practically an extension of his life. He invited us to dinners where we discussed geopolitics over glasses of red wine and sophisticated dishes he cooked himself. Gradually, he became a fatherly figure to us, a mentor who guided our steps with a wisdom that seemed almost superhuman. However, there was something about Ivanov that I couldn't decipher. Sometimes, during these meetings, I noticed a cold gleam in his eyes, a hardness that surfaced unexpectedly when he thought no one was paying attention. He told stories about his trips to Russia, and sometimes his accounts were so detailed and vivid that I wondered if he was telling us the truth or if there was something darker behind his words. One night, after one of these dinners, Laura confided that she also felt something strange about the professor. "Have you noticed how he always changes the subject when we ask about his life before Harvard?" she said, her voice laden with suspicion. This planted a seed of doubt in me, a restlessness that grew as we spent more time with Ivanov. It was also during this time that we began to notice strange things happening around us. Emily swore she saw a man watching us from outside Ivanov's office, and James mentioned he constantly felt followed. The environment that once seemed safe and inspiring now began to turn into something more sinister. Despite these concerns, we couldn't pull away. Ivanov's influence over us was too powerful. He made us feel invincible, as if we were chosen for something grand. Little did we know, we were entangling ourselves in a web of terror that would change our lives forever. The unease we felt towards Professor Ivanov grew with each meeting. The charm that initially attracted us now seemed to hide something sinister, something we couldn't ignore. Curiosity turned into an urgent need to uncover more about him, and that's how we began to investigate. It all started with James. He was always the most skeptical among us, the type of person who didn't accept anything without concrete evidence. One night, after a particularly disturbing class on espionage during the Cold War, James decided to stay a bit longer in Ivanov's office to look for clues. As he rummaged through the professor's files, he found something that changed everything: a hidden folder at the bottom of a locked drawer. The folder was filled with documents in Russian, which James translated with the help of an app. What he found were detailed records of financial transactions, photos of stern men in secret meetings, and encoded correspondence. Among the documents were clear references to the Bratva, the Russian Mafia. It made no sense. What did a Harvard International Relations professor have to do with the Mafia? When James showed us the documents, a chill ran down our spines. Emily was terrified, but Laura, always the most rational, suggested that maybe we were overreacting. "It could be academic research," she said, trying to sound convincing. But something told us it was much more than that. Our unease led us to dig deeper. We started searching online for any mention of the professor's full name. We found nothing in academic records before Harvard. It was as if he didn't exist before he arrived there. Then, on an obscure forum, we found an old Russian newspaper article mentioning a certain Viktor Ivanov, a former KGB agent suspected of criminal activities. The photo in the article was younger, but unmistakably our professor. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in a terrifying way. The man presenting himself as our mentor and friend was, in fact, an international criminal with deep and dangerous connections. The discovery shook us. Every smile, every compliment, every piece of advice from Ivanov now seemed like a carefully planned trap. However, there was no turning back. We were caught in a web of lies and secrets, and any wrong move could be fatal. We decided to confront Ivanov subtly, trying to extract more information without revealing our suspicions. Every conversation with him became a deadly game of chess, where one mistake could mean our downfall. On one particularly tense night, Ivanov invited us to dinner at his home. The tension in the air was palpable. As he served the wine, we watched his every move, every expression, searching for signs that he knew we were suspicious. The night passed slowly and painfully, and just as we were about to leave, James boldly asked a direct question about the Russian Mafia. Ivanov paused, the smile disappearing for a brief second before returning, colder and more calculated. "James, curiosity is an admirable quality, but sometimes it's better to leave certain questions unanswered," he said, his voice soft but with a clear undertone of threat. We left that house knowing we were now truly in danger. From that moment on, our lives changed forever. Every step we took, every decision we made, was permeated by the fear of being discovered. The psychological terror Ivanov imposed on us was unbearable. We knew we couldn't trust anyone, and any one of us could be next to disappear. We were trapped in a nightmare from which we didn't know how to escape, and Ivanov's shadow hung over every moment of our lives. After that night at Professor Ivanov's house, the tension between us became unbearable. We knew he was aware of our suspicions, and any wrong move could be fatal. However, it was exactly when we were most frightened and vulnerable that Ivanov made his boldest move. One day, after one of his classes, he called us for a private meeting in his office. The atmosphere, which once felt welcoming and mysterious, now seemed oppressive and threatening. We sat in silence, our hearts racing, as he watched us with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I have a special project for you," he said, his words resonating with a terrifying intensity. "A unique opportunity that could change your lives forever." He handed us sealed envelopes, one for each of us, and instructed us to open them only when we were alone. When I reached my room and opened the envelope, I found a meticulously handwritten letter offering a seductive proposal. Ivanov promised us access to an exclusive network of contacts, internships in prestigious international organizations, and a bright future in the world of global diplomacy. But there was a catch. The commitment required our total loyalty and discretion. There was also a contract, written in Russian, which he said was just a formality. That night, we met in secret to discuss what we had received. The offer was irresistible, but the contract made us uneasy. James, always the most suspicious, decided to translate it in full. What he discovered was horrifying. The contract was not just a professional commitment, but a blood pact. There were clauses detailing severe penalties for anyone who betrayed Ivanov's trust, explicitly mentioning the Russian Mafia. We were now faced with an impossible choice. Refusing meant confronting Ivanov and possibly disappearing like so many before us. Accepting meant selling our souls to a dangerous man and his criminal organization. The psychological pressure was unbearable, each of us facing a moral dilemma that ate away at us inside. In the days that followed, Ivanov intensified his pressure. He invited us to more frequent meetings, always offering tantalizing details about the project. We began to realize he was monitoring our every move, using his contacts to watch us closely. There was no escape. We felt as if we were being hunted, our movements restricted by a cunning predator. Laura, who was always the most ambitious, began to give in to temptation. "Maybe it's not so bad," she said, her voice trembling with doubt and hope. "If we follow the rules, we can come out of this stronger." But the fear in her eyes betrayed her words. We knew she was trying to convince herself as much as us. The climax of this tension came when Ivanov summoned us for a meeting in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Boston. The atmosphere was oppressive, the air charged with deadly silence. When we arrived, we were greeted by burly men dressed in black, who led us to a dimly lit room. In the center, a table with a single lamp hanging over it, casting sinister shadows on the walls. Ivanov was there, waiting. He offered us chairs and watched us with a penetrating gaze. "This is the moment of truth," he said, his voice echoing in the empty space. "Your decision will shape your future." He then proceeded to outline the details of his plan, a grand scheme to manipulate global markets using his network of contacts. It was a plan that promised wealth and power beyond our wildest dreams, but at a cost we could not fathom. As he spoke, I felt a wave of despair wash over me. The man who once seemed like a beacon of knowledge and opportunity now appeared as a dark figure, a puppet master pulling strings that led straight into the abyss. I looked at my friends, their faces a mix of fear and determination, and I knew we had reached a crossroads from which there was no turning back. It was then that Emily, always the quietest among us, made a decision that changed everything. With trembling hands, she stood up and confronted Ivanov, her voice steady but filled with defiance. "We can't do this," she said, her words resonating with a courage I had never seen before. "We won't be part of your criminal activities." The warehouse fell silent. Ivanov's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. For a moment, I feared he would order his men to take us away, to erase us from existence like so many others before us. But then, to my surprise, a smile spread across his face, a smile that chilled me to the bone. "Very well," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You have made your choice." With that, he nodded to his men, who stepped forward to escort us out of the warehouse. As we left, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. The days that followed were a blur of fear and uncertainty. We knew Ivanov would not let us go easily, that his reach extended far beyond the walls of Harvard. We lived in constant fear of retaliation, of waking up one morning to find ourselves surrounded by his men. But as time passed and nothing happened, we began to hope that maybe, just maybe, we had escaped his grasp. It has been years since that night at Harvard, and I still carry the weight of those memories with me. The experience changed me in ways I can't fully comprehend. I learned that sometimes the most dangerous monsters are the ones who wear a mask of charm and sophistication. I learned the true meaning of courage, of standing up for what is right even in the face of overwhelming darkness. As for Ivanov, he disappeared from Harvard shortly after our confrontation. Rumors circulated about his sudden departure, but no one knew the truth. Some said he had been called back to Russia by powerful forces, others that he had fled to South America to escape prosecution. Whatever the case, his absence brought a sense of relief mixed with lingering dread. To this day, I often wonder what became of Professor Ivanov, and if he ever found new students to ensnare in his web of deceit. I wonder how many lives he has ruined, how many dreams he has shattered in the name of power and greed. But above all, I carry with me the knowledge that sometimes the line between mentor and monster is thinner than we dare to imagine. And so, I share my story with you, hoping that it serves as a warning. Trust your instincts, question authority, and never underestimate the darkness that can lurk behind a smiling face. For in a world where appearances can deceive and illusions can shatter, the greatest challenge we face is to see through the mask and confront the truth that lies beneath. This is my real horror story, a tale of deception and danger, of courage and resilience. May it remind you that the greatest battles are often fought not with weapons, but with the strength of our convictions and the clarity of our vision. And may it inspire you to never surrender to fear, no matter how terrifying the shadows may become.